Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think MJ, shall we start right now, MJ? I think we're good to start.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop sharing
Shall
the
we?
screen.
All right. Yep. Thanks. Good morning. Very good morning to everyone, ladies and gentlemen, from all 8 different countries joining us for this session today. I am very happy to have all of you today. My name is Ruben. You'll be your MC and moderator for today. I'm from Singapore FinTech Association. I'd like to thank you for taking time to join us and welcome to our first Asian FinTech Association Roundtable. And so this session will be brought to you by Singapore FinTech Association, or SFA in short, supported by Singapore FinTech Festival 2021. And more importantly, today's session is really only made possible because of my 8 very esteemed speakers from 8 different countries in Asia. So before I start the session, I just want to express our deepest gratitude and appreciation to all my 8 speakers today. So thank you so much for taking time to share with us about the fintech scene in your country. Our makeup today comprises of 7 ASEAN countries and Hong Kong. It represents 8 closely knitted neighbors, all pursuing digital advancement through fintech solutions, but yet it actually signifies one huge market for all the market players. 90 minutes is all we have, and it's really a very short time. So all the more it makes the sharing very precious. So without further ado, I just want to kickstart the whole session. I'd like to present all our speakers to you. Now, I just want to share everyone that because of the number of speakers we have today, shall be going in alphabetical order. So in all the countries, so maybe we'll be starting with, I'll take everyone through the order for today. We'll start with Cambodia, followed by Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and last but not least, Vietnam. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to put in the Q&A. I'll do my best to try to address them towards the end. And sorry, I know question from Ben. I'm not on mute. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, Ruben.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
All right, that's good. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so without further ado, let me hand it over to our first speaker from Cambodia, Mr. Thomas. So I'll just give you a quick introduction of Mr. Thomas. So Mr. Thomas Pakani, he's currently the chair and membership. He's the chair of the membership, sponsorship, and community subcommittee in the Cambodia Association of Finance and Technology, in short, CAFT. Now, allow me to hand it over to Thomas. Thomas, to you, please.
Thank you, Ruben. Hi, good morning, everyone. Firstly, it's really pleasure to be here. Obviously, I'm not born in Asia, but Cambodia is my home for almost 11 years now. And I think this roundtable and also that I'm here is proof that fintech is kind of all-inclusive, that we live really in an all-inclusive world where it doesn't matter where you're from, but it matters where you make your home from. So just FYI, really honored to be among you guys today. I represent today Cambodia from the perspective of Cambodia FinTech Association. And also aside of that, I'm working in one of the first payment companies. I started PayPay, that's the e-wallet company here in Cambodia, and sitting on board of Forward Insurance or the Cambodian branch as independent director. So without further ado, I think that we have just maximum 10 minutes for each sharing. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Let me take you briefly to Cambodia for a short visit since COVID stopped this travel. So, most of the people, when they imagine Cambodia, they think, okay, either that stench of civil war or is this country full of tourism. However, Cambodia is a country that's been really digitalizing itself and pushing towards the fintech innovation for past 5 to 10 years. And the progress we've made over the past 5 years has been truly, at least from our perspective, truly tremendous. We've achieved very big digitalization and data infrastructure across the entire population. Cambodia is a country of 16.6 million people, where if you see it on the screen, I hope that it's visible, our mobile penetration is 124%. So Cambodia is a country where mobile devices and digitalization and access to 4G infrastructure has been on a rise. And this, of course, is also one of the key driving factors of Cambodian fintech being on the rise as well. Cambodian population is very young. I think that I don't have this in these slides, but more than 60% of the population of Cambodia is under age of. There are few data. Some data speaks about 30 years of age. Some data speak about 40 years of age. Some even about 25 and younger. Simply put, we are relatively young nations. And again, this one is one of the key playing factors of digitalization in the entire country. When you talk about startups, and fintech is a big part of this startup ecosystem in Cambodia, if you would come here 10 years ago, when I arrived first into the country, I think that we had just one cinema in the capital city here. We had one big shopping mall, well, semi-big. Pretty much nothing else was built in the past 10 years. And that's the incredible part of not being here before and being here just during the 10 years. I've seen it being built up to the point that we have more than 50 fintech startups. And as you can see on the screen, various other companies in tech and finance industry, they are on the rise. We have big presence of, for example, Family Startups, Family Global now, and tons of other accelerator programs. So surprisingly enough, or maybe not surprisingly for my other colleagues from other Asian countries, we all seen such a big amount of development in such a short amount of time that I think that this one wouldn't be visible and wouldn't be possible in Europe or in the US, right? Because we are still developing nations and we closely coordinate with our neighbors. I think that's what is driving this entire ecosystem, not just in Cambodia, but across all these Asian countries. So when we look at the fintech ecosystem and tech ecosystem in Cambodia, capital city Phnom Penh has around 1.5 million people. And we have more than 22 payment service institutions. Those are kind of non-banking financial institutions in the country, that mobile payments, e-wallets, remittance providers, so on and so forth. There are a rising amount of accounting systems and data aggregators. We have financing, credit scoring, and insurance companies that they are, of course, on the rise as well. Our insurance sector is very interesting. We have still big population of underinsured or non-insured population in the country, but we have many insurance players and the market is coming up. We starting to having very digitalized credit bureau of Cambodia and providing other alternative methods of credit scoring. So that's been kind of trend that's on the rise here. We are regulated within financial industry by National Bank of Cambodia. That's similar equivalent to what in Singapore we would have as a monetary authority of Singapore. And of course, NBC closely works with Ministry of Economy and Finance, which regulates other non-banking subjects such as securities, stock exchange, insurers, and so on and so forth. We are no strangers to international payments providers. So of course, in Cambodia, you will find everything from Visa, MasterCard, UnionPay, but also because we work closely with China, we have big presence of Alipay and WeChat payment infrastructure across the entire nation. So when we look at key trends, and those trends are evolving pretty much on an ongoing basis. So every year we would have to change this and update this. But I'll walk you through 5 top ones. Happy to share the slides afterwards, that you can see more of it, and SFA then can perhaps share it with participants if needed. But what's been really driving us is that payment service institution adoption. So despite how small country we are, just payment service institutions, that non-banking players, processed up to date $8 billion in transactions, which surged incredibly compared to that in 2016, we haven't had any. It all rise in past 3 to 4 years. Out of those 21 payment service institutions, we servicing almost 30,000 payment settlements agents and more than 15,000 merchant locations. Again, I would like to put it in perspective to how relatively small our capital city is, with 1.5 million people only. So if you look at the graph on the right, what we are really trying to compare ourselves is to see the trends with our colleagues across the other Asian countries. And we believe that considering that 11% of the population in the country is somehow using or is exposed to use of payment service institutions, that brings it up to roughly 11%. And based on the market study, it's really kind of within this tipping point part. So 10 to 18%. After that, we would reach the maturity. So Cambodia just got there to that 11% mark. So I hope that we are, closer now to countries such as Vietnam, Thailand, and so on and so forth. But definitely this trend hasn't slowed down, and with COVID, not thanks to COVID, but with COVID, it's been even moving much rapidly. I would say that trend we've seen in COVID as an increase of adoption of payment service institutions and fintech overall. We don't just look at short-term trend. I think that the COVID has speeded up, but it also ended this behavioral change across entire population. So what we see now, I think that will keep going in the same direction. Maybe not as fast as radically as it was during COVID pandemic, but it definitely will keep going in the same direction. One of the interesting highlights is that we always had very traditional SME sector, a lot of manufacturing segments, a lot of agriculture, never digitalizing those. But with access to financing and with us having more than 100 banking, microfinance, and payment service institutions in total across the country, small, medium, and micro enterprises across the entire country getting access to digitalization and finance. Hence, you would see the projects that tackle blockchain agriculture, collaboration platforms, access to near to instant loans for agriculture players, and so on and so forth. So the cooperation between developed companies and corporates in the capital city and rural areas, which rural areas still is pretty much consisting of 90% of the country, has been on the increase as well. What we've definitely didn't stay behind is standardization of QR codes. So we launching, because we learned also from our friends from Thailand and for example from Indonesia, we're launching our own KHQR standard, EMV based. So that consolidation across multiple QR codes and multiple payment methods at each merchant into one common infrastructure has been definitely happening. And it provides, again, increased adoption of payments, digital payments across wider population. I know that electronic KYC is pretty much common standard now anywhere, but most of the companies and people would go for third-party solutions that are available. But in Cambodia, we have our own alphabet, of course, our own language. We have big amount of startups that focusing and specializing on KYC for Cambodians in our local language, developed in-house. So we have big, almost individual market segment of fintech that just focusing on eKYC solutions. So I think that we're lacking behind in this sector compared to other countries in Asia, definitely compared to Singapore, but we are learning a lot, and 2019, 2020 have been kind of breaking years for us, where more and more banks are adopting full online onboarding, almost closer to being fully digital bank or neobank setup, despite they are still traditional banking houses. One thing that we are really very proud is that we launched, under the National Bank, under the Central Bank of Cambodia, the Project Bakong, which is national blockchain payment infrastructure. And not only that we, I think, reach more than 200,000 wallets with pretty much no advertising utilizing this system, but we have more than, this is outdated slide, but we have now more than, I think, 15 institutions on the Project Bakong, and we believe that in few years' time, everybody will be using it. What this enables is essentially seamless real-time money transfer and money movement between banking, microfinance, and payment service institutions in the country, as well as we trying to expose it outside. So we already have some tests going with Maybank and Malaysia for international remittance through the blockchain system, and we call it Bakong. So what's happening really in the country, especially from the international perspective, a lot of mergers and acquisitions, Competition is heating up. Of course, as you heard the numbers, 16 million people, 100 plus payment companies, we becoming to see the consolidation on the market. But also it is good because it brings a lot of international attention, and we start seeing influx of international investors to the country, especially to the fintech sector, which is extremely important because, you know, it's not just about the financial resources that we get, but also about strategic help and learning experience and expertise we can get from more developed countries. So we always say we started 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago in payment service institutions, hence we really seeing the potential, we leapfrogging. We don't have to go into the traditional journey. We're learning from where many people failed and learned before. So we have kind of head start because of this.
Sorry, Thomas, can I invite you to just conclude this session because you're running out of time?
Yes. This is last slide. So essentially for CAFT, we stand for Collaboration, Advocacy, Facilitation, and Teaching as the FinTech Association in Cambodia. And it's to bring together, our main mission is to bring together not just payment service institutions in banking sector, but entire sector, seeing the FinTech as the wider reaching element. And Ruben, as we discussed last time together, this is our still main dream, because we are just small part of a much bigger pie. And we think that creating, you know, collaborative ecosystem across the fintechs of entire Southeast Asia, this one would help countries, developing nations like Cambodia, and hopefully the entire ecosystem. Thank you.
Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. In view of time, what I'll do is I'll conclude for everyone at the end of the session. Now, without further ado, so thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Helene. Ms. Helene Lee, she's the General Manager for FinTech Association of Hong Kong. Now, Helene, can I invite you to share your slides and please take a stage.
Thank you so much, Ruben. Instead of having slides after slides, which I know everybody will be doing quite a bit, and in the essence of time, I'm very happy to take questions. I want to share a few brief points about the very vibrant scene of FinTech in Hong Kong. Okay, and the FinTech scene in Hong Kong, it can be summarized in 3 major pillars. As we know, the Singapore FinTech Festival is going on right now. We are all very busy watching either virtually or physically. And last week, we had our Hong Kong FinTech Week as well in a hybrid format where over 8,000 people come in and out, and it was streamed to over 500,000 people watching as well. Last year, because of COVID, we all had only just a virtual format as well. But the 3 pillars really shaping the Hong Kong FinTech scene, I think first is the access to capital. Okay, and I want to draw on the fact that Hong Kong Venture Capital Association, actually the VC scene in Hong Kong is extremely vibrant. The VC Association actually boasts of 9 out of the top 10 VCs in the world are actually hub there. And together they have a combined AUM of $2 trillion US. Now, these people are hunting for opportunities in all different aspects. So the access to capital, plus, of course, as we all know, the Alibaba Group, they have the Alibaba Entrepreneur Fund, as well as other, incubators and startup funds, such as Cyberport, such as the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. These are all providing funding as well as networking opportunities for the startups to the scale-ups. Not all of them are seed stage, and it's quite healthy. Spread across the whole spectrum of fundraising, from seed stage to really the B round and sometimes even the C round. Now, apart from access to capital, the second is that Hong Kong has a very diverse FinTech landscape. Digital banking, the virtual banks, as we all know, Hong Kong's got 8 of them. There are 8 virtual banks competing with each other, but also looking at the Greater Bay Area, which is the backdrop against which the Hong Kong market in itself is positioned against. So apart from virtual banks, payments is again another very vibrant sector. Most of the big payment giants are very active here as well as in Singapore. So really Singapore and Hong Kong is like the two North Asia focused, Greater China focused hubs. And then the one is more of the Southeast Asian, ASEAN focused hubs. For us, it's not Hong Kong or Singapore, it's Singapore and Hong Kong. I think it must be mentioned, in that context. And payments is the same way. Apart from the giants like Visa, MasterCard, and all that, Air Wallets, for instance, has recently moved its headquarters to Hong Kong, and we all know that Air Wallets is on a roll. There are so many exciting things happening with that payments company. The buy now, pay later, BNPL scene is also extremely active within that payment sector. So we've got quite a few homegrown, partners as well in that scene. And also apart from that, the other verticals like AI and big data and so on, there are a lot of Hong Kong companies, fintech companies that work in the ESG data area. Okay. So as we all know, data is a huge pain point as we drive sustainable finance and ESG, which is another big area that I'm personally heavily invested in, as some of you might know. So there are lots of data and AI companies leveraging those technology to try to actually bring about a more, a more credible set of data in order for the ESG agenda to advance. So apart from that, really it's quite vibrant across the whole, fairly diverse taxonomy, if you like, of fintech. It's not just clustered in one or two sectors. You've got a pretty healthy, overview across the whole taxonomy of fintech. The third pillar, which is also very important, is I think there is a very fluid kind of partnership view between Hong Kong and Greater Bay Area. In Qianhai, which is the big, tech hub in Hong Kong, in Shenzhen, there are lots of activities happening. And I think it's very important that we see Hong Kong not just as a market of 8 million people. It's not just a market that at max, you can capture only 8 million people, fairly limited in size, really. It's packed against the whole GBA with the 11 cities and, the whole flow of capital as well as flow of talent in that area, I think is absolutely stunning. And with the Wealth Connect opening up, and with the Bond Connect and all that already happening, there are lots of through train that will be happening in that area as well. So I think that's a very significant pillar that is driving the fintech scene in Hong Kong as well. I want to end just by saying that a lot of the success and the vibrancy of the ecosystem here is being driven by business matching and partnership. I really believe that collaboration is the new competitive advantage. It's not cutthroat against, it's either me or you, okay? It's not me and you. Very frequently, your competitors can be some of your best partners if you can find a way to work around it. In some ways, you are competing, but in many other ways, you actually can complement each other. And there are ways in which if you can find a way to work together, it truly is a win-win. So I think that's really how we look at things here. I believe that through collaboration and through a lot of partnership and business matching that we are doing, not just on the corporate side, but with our friends across the table here as well, and many of our friends in the ASEAN area and Singapore area, I really believe that that's going to drive the scalability and drive the adoption much faster than we can go alone. There's a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, you go together. So I just want to pause at that and hand it back to Ruben, and happy you take any questions.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the way you conclude that, and that's the start of why everyone is here together today. So I think this is really marks a very good and very apt conclusion there. Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Now, allow me to hand it over right now to Pak Freddy from Indonesia. Pak Freddy Kayadi is the member of Indonesia FinTech Association, FTech, Ethnics Board. Pak Freddy, please.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Ruben, for the opportunity. So maybe let me share a screen. Wait a moment. Okay. Good morning again, everybody. So I would like to share the FinTech arena in Indonesia. So as mentioned by Ruben, I'm from Indonesian FinTech Association. Currently, we hold the FinTech months from today until the beginning of the December. So there are a lot of FinTech company and a lot of authorities share their experience, their tips and many things to audience that who wish to know more about FinTech. So yeah, FinTech in Indonesia.
Sorry, Pak Fadi, Ruben here. Can I invite you to speak up a bit because we're getting some response that they can't hear you.
Hello,
Yeah.
voice clear or not? Or...
Yeah, if you can speak louder, that'd be good. Thank you.
Hello, my voice clear?
It's
okay.
clear, but can it be louder? Can you speak louder? Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Thank you, Pak.
Okay, will do. Will do. Okay, so FinTech in Indonesia basically recently growth very fast and become one of the hot commodity in Indonesia and attract many foreign investors come to Indonesia to do the investment and also doing the business in FinTech arena. Aside of my role in the association, I also the tax consultant and lawyer in Indonesia that helping inbound and outbound investment, including fundraising in FinTech sector. So that's a bit my background. So now move to the what FinTech landscape in Indonesia. Basically, like in Hong Kong, we have 3 pillars here. So FinTech in Indonesia, number 1 pillar is under the central bank or Bank of Indonesia. Under the Bank of Indonesia, there's a payment system or payment sector. So like e-money, payment gateway, settlement, switching, and so on and so forth. That's under the central bank. That type of business model must have the license or registration from Bank Indonesia. The second authority that governs the FinTech arena is OJK or Financial Service Authority. Different with central bank, this authority have quite broad authority to oversee the FinTech sectors. The hot potato one is peer-to-peer lending. That's I think the number 1 sector in terms of volume, in terms of users, in terms of ecosystem. This authority also have other authority to oversee multi-finance, securities, crowdfunding, aggregator, and so on and so forth. On the third pillar, there is a commodity trading supervision body, or we so-called BAPEPT. This currently have a power and authority to oversee and govern the crypto assets, trading and exchange. So that's as an opening of the 3 pillars in Indonesia about the FinTech. So maybe let me continue in more details. So back to the first pillar about the central bank area, that's the industry. Would be like e-money, acquire, payment gateway, e-wallet, fund transfer. That's on the PGP. On the PIP, there's a principal, switching, clearing, and final settlement. So that's basically this is all about the payment on the infrastructure of the payment and how to help the merchant to do the settlement and so on and so forth with the customers and with the other party in the ecosystem. So that's on the payment system. We keep updating the regulations, so including the latest one in 2021, that the regulation allows foreigners to own up to 85%, but the voting rights limited to 49%. So that's a bit on the payment industry in Indonesia. So here that in the PGP or the payment license, we have 3 categories. So in short, the 1 to 3, number 3 has the quite broader scope of business model. So remittance and other services. Yeah. So this is sorry, number 1 has a broader business models. 2 bit limited, and 3 is the smallest one. Now we move to P2P lending. This one is, as I mentioned earlier, P2P is the most popular in Indonesia. Why? Because many people not have a bank access, but people would like to have a bank service, including the lending. So the P2P industry very favorite, and the highest growth in Indonesia in terms of volume, in terms of ecosystem and users, and so on and so forth. Because this give many lending service to the people that in the past cannot have a bank assistance. So because P2P also they can also modify the service, including the digital credit card, so they can have the cash loan for purchasing various goods and service in the merchant by using this P2P lending player services. Basically, if you wish, or the business player in the P2P, they have two phase: registration phase and then the license phase. Once already registered, they can start their business. But within 1 month, 1 year, 12 months, they have to start preparing to have the business license from the authority. The paid-up capital also not so big. This is basically the smallest paid-up capital requirements compared to other fintech sector. So they have a minimum capital only 10 billion rupiah, yeah. But the maximum lending as well is 2 billion, so not so much as also, but still enough to grab the market in Indonesia. P2P have some good corporate governance, including the anti-money laundering guidelines that the P2P players should comply with. I move to the securities crowdfunding. This is also one of the sector that attract some people to do the fundraising. This helps the ecosystem. This helps the startup digital to do the fundraising via this platform. So the equity or securities crowdfunding help the startup company to standardize their pitch deck, they standardize their offering document to certain investors in the platform. So in the digitally and automatically they can have like a semi IPO in the platform. So people or the investor registered in the platform can select which potential investment they can do. Then they can do the investment, and also the secondary trading if they think they want to exit from the investment. So this quite also growth recently and helps the other digital sectors grow by doing the fundraising.
Sorry, Pak Freddy, you got 1 more minute.
Yes. The other sector that under OJK is a regulatory sandbox. Sandbox is not licensed. This is only the registration. So why the authority have the sandbox? This is to make sure that many new business model registered their business model to the authority, and the authority would like to see whether any risk to the society. So there are I think 14 cluster for the sandbox. So authority have opportunity to see the business model and have a regular report to make sure the community has no negative impact. And multi-finance as well. Multi-finance now can do the technology, information technology transaction. So OJK allows the multi-finance, which is a traditionally offline business model, but now can do the online business model. The third pillar, so like mentioned earlier, is the crypto asset and crypto exchange. The key players basically they can take a role one of these 5 future exchange, future clearing institution, asset physical sellers, crypto asset customers, and manager or crypto asset storage.
Sorry, but Freddie, can I invite you to conclude? Sorry about that.
Okay, so the conclusion is this is in the slide that's a comparison of the P2P Capital, comparison of the foreign ownership, the license and business model. The slide may be distributed later by the moderator or the host of Singapore FinTech Association for further review by the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you so much for sharing about this process, Freddie. It's really very useful to know, and I think it also gives our audience a very good lens and to find out how to actually operate in Indonesia. Now, without further ado, can I invite our next speaker? Now, from Indonesia, we'll take you to another adjacent country. So let me bring you back to Malaysia. So can I invite Ms. Karen Phua? Karen is the president of FinTech Association of Malaysia, FAOM. Karen, please.
Thank you. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, great, thank you. Good morning, and thank you to the Singapore FinTech Association for inviting us to share our perspective in this roundtable. Happy to see everyone here. Would have been better if we can meet in person, but grateful nonetheless. I am Karen Phua, the president of the FinTech Association of Malaysia, and also the country manager for Funnel Malaysia and equity crowdfunding platform licensed by the Securities Commission. So at a glance, you are looking at the growing adult population and 77.4% urbanization. Malaysia has been the hub for big tech giants like HP, Dell, and Western Digital since the 80s. It's no surprise that Malaysian tech talent is always in demand. With such positive numbers, we believe this will impact, number one, access to financial services to so many millions of people so that they can fulfill their potential. And number two, speed and simplicity. So those who already use financial services can do so faster and at a lower cost. And number three, ecosystem growth. As successful companies generate capital and founders fuel further innovation in their cities and countries. And the last but not least is economic growth, which can accelerate and be distributed more evenly. As fintech innovation spreads across the world, its impact will be far and wide, right? The industry has grown by 164% in the number of fintech companies in 2020 from 2017, in conjunction with the official launch of the Malaysian FinTech Week, with a theme that resonates to every fintech in the world, and that is advancing digitalization for recovery, sustainability, and inclusion. Do tune in as we will also unveil the launch of the Financial Sector Blueprint 2022 to 2026, which will chart the priorities of Malaysia's financial sector in the next 5 years. The Malaysian fintech market is showing activity, but factors related to the regulatory framework, innovation capacity, and access to funding are impeding its development. Once the country addresses these issues, we would be close to bearing a structured market because we have the market to support the growth. 2020, we saw numerous regulatory changes being introduced to help digital finance thrive. In June, Bank Negara issued a new policy framework on electronic know your customer, EKYC, to facilitate digital onboarding. And in tandem, the government has been working on the National Digital Identity Framework. So everyone is excited when BNM or Bank Negara release a licensing framework for digital banks, where up to 5 digital banking licenses will be granted by the Q1 next year. Giant populations clearly help, providing domestic companies with opportunity to scale before needing to consider entering foreign markets. And in no particular order, the countries that we are interested in are Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. Market structures are high, smartphone penetration, and limited banking access, which is why it rules out Singapore. And for example, allow for exchange of fintech models between countries. You've seen how e-wallets and cashless payment fintech solutions have been central to the new economic model emerging after COVID-19. Our industry can no longer be dismissed as a fad, but success can breed super dominant companies. We ask the question of whether there is a risk of gaps emerging between the new incumbents, walled in by network effects and with access to endless amount of capital, and the next generation of innovators struggling to raise seed finance. So we see the numbers firsthand with the merchant QR registration increased from 333,000 pre-pandemic to more than 1 million of the first half of 2021, driven by strong online and contactless payment demand during the pandemic. This emerging trend has set consumers to a new path of behavior. One will question if this will revert, or will they be more sophisticated and demanding? Another interesting trend is the digital payment transaction has grown 44% to 4.5 billion from January to August this year, compared with the same period last year. So we have seen how small businesses have been badly impacted by the global response to the pandemic. Last year, small and medium enterprises GDP contracted 7.3% sharper than the decline of Malaysia's GDP, and non-SMEs GDP, which shrank by 5.6 and 4.6% respectively. This is the first time in 17 years that SME GDP has been lower than Malaysia's GDP. However, during the pandemic, the Securities Commission noted encouraging developments where equity crowdfunding and peer-to-peer financing platforms continue to meet and support the funding needs of micro, small, and medium enterprises. There are currently 21 ECF and P2P platforms registered with the Securities Commission, which have collectively raised more than 2.2 billion ringgit to close to 4,000 SMEs, which since their inception. There was a bit of hiccup during the first lockdown, as with everyone trying to find their footing, but alternative funding platforms raised more than 1.3 billion ringgit in 2020. In the first half of 2021 alone, a further 625 million ringgit was raised through ECF and P2P, an increase of 151% and 220% respectively, compared to the same period in 2020. ECF and P2P attracted young investors with nearly 60% of participants aged below 35. The digital asset exchanges in Malaysia also continue to thrive, with over 300,000 new accounts opened this year to date. Since its introduction in 2019, the volume of digital assets traded has surpassed 1 billion ringgit, with values in excess of 16 billion as at September 2021. So the association has started the FinTech Playbook, which is co-created with the Central Bank of Malaysia. The objective is to funnel all inquiries inbound and outbound through one website. In the respective pillar, we've partnered with service providers that will be able to assist FinTech startups to grow and thrive. Several things that are not covered, which is beyond our capabilities, and that is infrastructure. Last mile delivery is still a challenge in Malaysia, but when COVID-19 hits, mobile leapfrogging has enabled many markets to adopt the technology. The major driver for the digitalization of cashless societies boils down to really smart government policies. So in order to improve consumer adoption, the important thing at the end of innovation, it has to solve a real problem. Problems remove real friction, and that will be the reason for consumers to adopt new technology. And of course, it comes with its own set of challenges when dealing with data in such large amount. The trust deficit is something we have to work on. With that, we can proceed with the next exercise. And we have been advocating the sharing of behavioral data among organizations, be it in the private or public sector, because behavioral data is not deemed as private data, as long as it cannot be used to identify one particular individual who generated their data. The ability to analyze and share this data will give many stakeholders an understanding of the key issue statement and how these issues can be restored. The next biggest, as you can see, all challenges are big in my dictionary. It's challenging for a fintech company to do a reality check when it comes to regulatory approval and how long it takes to get one. And this works both ways. Regulators are seeing entrants to market who lack the traditional background and worldviews typically associated with incumbents. So calling into question regulators' own traditional assumptions and about market participants and practices. So I would like to end this short presentation with words of assurance. The world's largest emerging market isn't a country or region. It is the world's women. Don't forget that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I like the way you ended, and you're absolutely right. So I really have to concur that with you. Between my wife and I, she's the more capable one. So I think that says a lot. Now, next one. I'd like to invite Ms. Amor McClang from Philippines. So Amor is the Executive Director of FinTech Philippines Association. Amor, please.
Yes, Ruben. Hello. I just wanted to check if I'm coming in clearly. Great.
Yes, we
Okay.
can. Yeah, we
We
can
have
hear
a
you.
few slides. I'd like to keep it short and sweet so that we can accommodate for more speakers. Cheryl, the slides, please. So my name is Amor, and in FinTech Philippines Association, which is the largest and most inclusive trade association in the Philippines as it pertains to FinTech, we do have a very different approach. It's all about teching up the country through FinTech. And I'm very, very happy to say that we are also the partner of the World FinTech Festival and the Singapore FinTech Festival. So that's why everyone is crazy busy. Congratulations, Ruben, for being able to bring everyone together. Next slide, please. What makes our approach to FinTech rather different is that we look at FinTech in the Philippines not so much as a vertical, but rather a horizontal that powers many industries in the Philippines that's needing teching up. So I don't want to go Jerry Maguire on you right now, Ruben, but really it's all about show me the money and show me the money now. So the money, whether it's in terms of payments, remittances, or cross-border procurement, or even investments. We've identified 12 pain points in the Philippines, and all of them can be answered not just by technology, but by FinTech. Next slide, please. So in our case, it's not just November that we celebrate FinTech advocacy, but it's a 365-day advocacy, which is, I think, very similar for many of you. So ours is a whole of nation and a whole of country approach. In other words, we not only look at, these are not the members of FinTech Philippines, but rather the conveners of Digital Pilipinas, FinTech Philippines being the exclusive industry partner. So we bring not just other foreign governments into the narrative, but more importantly, other leaders in verticals outside of FinTech. Next slide, please. Happy to note that just this week during a Singapore FinTech Festival, we announced the first ever duocorn in the country, and that is GCash, one of our co-conveners. We actually have two unicorn supporters, one of them being Sendit. Hello, Indonesia, Sendit. And of course, we have Brankas, who's also hello Indonesia. So Indonesia and Singapore is a very, very special place in our heart. Quickly, we are running sandboxes across multiple pillars. So we have, quote unquote, brazenly stolen the idea of sandboxes from the financial payment space and brought them to other equally important verticals. So we're running projects in InsurTech, even in teching up of the environment. So imagine the tokenization of carbon credits, esports and gaming, the powering of and the marriage of esports and gaming, FinTech and cyber defense and cybersecurity. And we're also helping power the Real Estate and PropTech Association. So as you can see, this is not a Christian marriage, it's an open marriage when it comes to FinTech in the Philippines. Not only are we working towards massive adoption, job creation, so Ruben and the rest of our pillars, we hope to be able to have cross-border exchanges in a work from home situation, and also collectivizing all the legislation and policy that needs to be revised and updated. As my final slide, next slide, I wanted to share with the rest of you, what is our blueprint for 2021 and 2022? 2022 being a very, very important year for the Philippines because it is election year. So there will be a changing of the guards for us. So Web 3.0 is what's powering this advocacy. Everything decentralized, everything DeFi, everything about powering and the monetization of the internet. So I talked about thought leadership as the first pillar. Our second pillar is all about active academic advocacy. So in partnership with Oxygen and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, we will be running micro courses in the Philippines that will all be certified by Affinity, which is a fully owned portable identity technology company owned by Temasek. We talked about the creation of innovation hubs across various state universities. So we are not just involving FinTech players, but more importantly, the academe. The advocacy, promoting the digitalization of MSMEs in the country. We have just signed and partnered this year with Proxtera, which is the global procurement platform of the MAS. And we are the local channel partner in the Philippines. We've built a nifty ecosystem that's intended to allow even our smallest coffee growers, say for example in Tawi-Tawi, to sell to coffee shops, say in Hanoi. So more of that. Legislative advocacy, not all FinTechs, we want to be able to make sure that we do the right thing. And between the Philippines and also Singapore, we have some of the most enabling regulators. You know, Ruben, I'm even averse to calling them regulators. They're more enablers than anything. And tomorrow, in the global stage, we will be launching the enhanced FinTech partnership program between the MAS and BSP. And this will allow for our MSMEs with just one mobile number to be able to trade and exchange money and trust. Now, digital infrastructure. This is something that I'll probably give an extra few minutes to. How can we truly engage in a digital economy cross-border if our API infrastructure is still lacking? And so for us, for this coming year, one of the things we're going to really advocate in the Philippines is an API for every business. How do we ensure that we're able to connect not just to each other, but also in a cross-border economy? I know the challenge is formidable, and I'll be happy to entertain questions regarding that arena, but we will take it on. Now, FinTech, as I said, in the Philippines is really the secret sauce that powers other verticals, such as the teching up of e-commerce, the teching up of health and insurance, RegTech, we hope to make it sexy this year, cybersecurity, and Ruben, I'm very proud of the fact that our cybersecurity advocacies includes even the white hat hackers. How about that? They've all agreed to come out and be part of a very cyber protected and cyber defended Philippines. PropTech and real estate has historically been very resistant, but not this year. We've launched our PropTech consortium with FinTech as a very important pillar. Last but not the least, ethical hacking, in the elections. We're going to be working closely with our white hat hackers and also our election bodies to ensure that we demand not just a solid FinTech, technology, and an innovation agenda for those who are going to be elected into office next year. So watch out for that. Thank you at mabuhay po sa inyong lahat. Thank you to Ruben and the Singapore FinTech Association. We look forward to partnering with you towards a more digital Pilipinas. Mabuhay po kayong lahat.
Thank you, Amo. Thank you so much. Now, two things I want to share with you. First one is you have fan club here, so there are a lot of cheers and shouts for you. So really, I'm glad I have you on board today. And secondly, Jerry Maguire is one of my favorite shows. So thanks for bringing that up. Now, next one, let me bring everyone back to closer to home, where I'm from. So I'd like to invite Ms. Seng Kai Ling from Singapore. So Kai Ling is the Vice President of Singapore FinTech Association, and I'd like to invite her to take a stage. Thank you. Kai Ling, please, we can see your slide.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was on mute. Thanks for everybody for having me. I'll keep this short because I believe that you guys have heard enough about Singapore FinTech Association, Singapore FinTech ecosystem, since we are day 4 in the Singapore FinTech Festival. Just a quick download. I think just to recap in terms of Singapore FinTech Association's vision, which mainly rely on the ecosystem approach in terms of fostering collaboration, and therefore that's how we can see so many, I guess, counterparties in ASEAN region as well as Hong Kong join us today in today's session. Just a broad overview of the Singapore FinTech ecosystem by sector. There are various ways to cut the sector. This is just one way of actually categorizing them. There are many ways to actually get to know some of this, I would say, industry subsector by joining us. You know, either follow us on social or join our subcommittee to actually know more about specific sectors like insurtech, capital markets tech, or payments. I believe all of you probably have seen the PR that's released earlier this morning in terms of the report that Singapore FinTech Association has collaborated with UOB as well as PwC. This year in Singapore, we've seen one of the largest funding in total for all FinTech within our ecosystem. I mean, year to date, the numbers that we've seen is about 1.6 billion, which is a very good news for anyone that's based in Singapore. And this is like a broad breakdown in terms of where all the funding goes. If you want to find out more, please feel free to head over to, I think our LinkedIn would have a link on the website and UOB to download the report. In conjunction with the Singapore FinTech Festival, we also have another report, I believe is the Essential FinTech Talent Report. I'm sure Ruben, if there's any questions, please reach out to Ruben to find out more in terms of all this data and research that we have done up at the Singapore FinTech Association site. Just newsflash in terms of funding. The last 6 months, we have seen one of the largest funding within the Singapore ecosystem, and we do see new unicorn being minted. Congrats to NIM as well as Advanced.ai, who have gotten, I think Advanced.ai got 400 mil from Standard Chartered in terms of in the buy now, pay later sector. To also share some of the key developments in Singapore that we have seen. I think some of this really echo what some of the other association have seen, whether it's in Cambodia in terms of acceleration of digital payments, or whether what Karen mentioned in terms of online digitization. I think one of the key things that in Singapore, we have always embarked on the eKYC or e-identity approach since quite long, but I think this last 1 year we have seen the acceleration of everything, even paying of food in hawker center via the digital payments. And I think one thing that has accelerated this year, we have also seen that actually in terms of SingPass, which is our eKYC e-identity in the Singapore regime. What happened the last 1 year is that actually we see acceleration of adoption for banks and FI to actually use this so for people to actually KYC almost instantly. The Payment Services Act is what I mentioned just now in terms of acceleration of digital payments. It was enacted, the legislation will roll out Jan last year, and we have seen like, I think 200 plus fintech actually being captured under this new act, which also include cryptocurrency. We're actually watching this closely, where from a Singapore Fintech Association basis, we even launched a subcommittee that caters to this sector. So these are some of the main changes we have seen. Just want to share as we in Singapore accelerate towards a digital economy vision. And on the CBDC side, I think yesterday Mr. Ravi Menon did mention about looking into it and how we adopt retail CBDC in terms of our own economy. So that's something that we can actually look forward to from a Singapore basis. Yeah. In terms of like, since I've started this role in SFA, we do see certain trends that's happening the last 6 months. I think one of the more common theme that we have seen throughout is embedded finance. It's kind of like a new in thing after open banking. It's like a natural progression. Embedded finance is actually include like buy now, pay later, where actually products of financial or fintech actually prioritize user journey and prioritize user journey in terms of this distribution network. So example would be buy now, pay later. Instead of actually financing it separately in a separate platform, you do see buy now, pay later products being embedded into checkout in the e-commerce website. I think we're beginning to see more of such embedded finance products or fintech coming up in Singapore. It's a very big theme, as well as spurring a lot of this funding growth in this region. The second is asset tokenization. I think since the start, since Monday, I'm sure everybody would have been aware of the big Web 3.0 theme, highlighted also by, the Philippines Association, in terms of how we see decentralized working, blockchain coming in, and like what I mentioned just now, retail CBDC. It's a very big theme in terms of how do we actually digitize real world assets as well as digital assets, and making it integrated in the digital economy. And of course, now in the inward, in terms of like metaverse, this has actually heightened in terms of the trends and demand in this arena. The last one I would say is the ESG. I think personally in my own, I run my own fintech company, we do see an increased demand in terms of investors within our network looking at ESG products. Something that we do see from a cross-sector-wide basis, something that is a general theme where all fintech will start to actually try to measure their ESG footprint better. I think Helen from Hong Kong's association did touch on this a little earlier. It's really about how do we actually capture data better, make more sense of this data and actually measure our footprint better. And as a result of that, able to actually improve how we can improve our standing and improve how we know in terms of impact within the current economy. Yeah, I think that's all from my end, and happy to address any questions later. Thanks.
Thank you, Carling. Thank you for that very succinct sharing. Really appreciate that. Now, without further ado, let me invite Kun Chalantat Kamararatana, our friend from Thailand. So Chalantat is the president of Thai FinTech Association, and he'll be able to take us through a snapshot of the current FinTech landscape in Thailand. So while Carling, can I invite you to stop sharing the slides first so that Chalantat can do that? We need to stop sharing first. And in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, please bear with me as we power through. We have two more sharings, one from Thailand and last one from Vietnam. And then after that, we'll come up with a quick conclusion. All right. So please bear with us in the meantime. Chalantat, are you?
Hi everyone. Yep. Thanks, Ruben. Thanks for inviting us. We are here, ASEAN. We are one of the biggest region in terms of economic prosperity, in terms of people. Okay, for Thailand at a glance, I'm sure all of you guys might know Thailand in terms of Bangkok, Phuket, or Chiang Mai. Okay, so today I have about 10 minutes to share you about the fintech in Thailand. Okay, my background is actually in real tech, so That would be more on the retail investment side for today, about 10 minutes. First and foremost, I would like to focus about the trends. I mean, the trends in fintech in Thailand. Okay, we have such a good growth in terms of number of retail investors in Thailand in both traditional assets like stocks and digital assets. Okay, to give you more concrete example, during the January of last year, I mean 2020, there were only 1.2 million of investors for the stock market. I mean the unique investors, but just 18 months after the COVID, we have about 2 million of traders or investors in that market. It means that within 18 months, we have almost doubled the number of investors participating in the stock market. But if you ask me about the number of investors in the digital asset or cryptos, right now we have 1.6 million of traders in crypto trading in our Thai registered digital asset exchange. Okay, and we cannot count the number of investors investing in Binance. Okay, because we obviously cannot access that information. So retail investors are very active, and right now we are talking about the coexistence of traditional assets and digital assets. So that's why we have seen a lot of fintech startups coming into town, offering something like algo trading for stocks, for cryptos, to have automated trading models for him. And the minimum investment is quite low. We are talking about only 1,000 US to start investing in that robot. And we have several partners domestically and internationally to offer robo-advisor in mutual funds, in ETFs, okay? And we have the news that the biggest bank, Siam Commercial Bank, just bought 51% stake in the largest of digital asset exchange in Thailand under the name of BitCup. So this is the main signal that incumbents are seriously doing a digital asset business. And by that transaction, it made BitCup the second fintech unicorn in Thailand after Ascent Money. Okay, so that's the trend in Thailand. For any other fintech subsegments, we are talking about the importance of crowdfunding, okay, or peer-to-peer lending. In Thailand, we have multiple regulators, unlike in Singapore that you guys have MAS doing everything, right? In Thailand, we have Central Bank of Thailand, the BOT. We have Thai SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. We have the Office of Insurance, okay, and AMLO, right? For crowdfunding space, Central Bank will take care of the peer-to-peer lending, meaning that if people borrow and lend from other people, it would be governed by the Bank of Thailand. And we are in the sandbox for that peer-to-peer lending, okay? On the another side, if a corporate, either SME or startup, would like to borrow funds from people, it would be supervised by the Thai SEC, okay? And at the moment, there are a good number of crowdfunding portals operating for that debt crowdfunding and equity crowdfunding. And I think there are some from Singapore, okay? Right here, we are about to revamp many things, including the access to National Credit Bureau. Okay, at the moment, crowdfunding portals cannot access to that National Credit Bureau, but at the government level, we are working to allow those portals to gain access to the National Credit Bureau, okay? And the next big thing is about the competition, okay, which means that we both compete and cooperate among the startups and between startups and incumbents. So the trend in Thailand is that, honestly speaking, it's quite difficult to get the VC fund or to get the funding, okay, because the number of VCs or private equities in Thailand are pretty low compared to our GDP. So that's why corporate venture capital has played a vital role for funding and to make it happen as a collaboration among the startup who is more agile, who is more active, and the incumbents who have a large customer base. So the trend in Thailand is that most of the major banks, okay, you can name it, you can rank by the market cap of the bank, they would be very active in terms of the VC to invest in fintech startups. And then that would be the collaboration among them, okay? And we will see many super apps in Thailand to offer different fintech services. The path of each super apps are the same, okay? First of all, they have a very large user base, such as e-commerce, ride-hailing, whatever. And then they will provide the payment service and then the wallet service, okay? The wallet in Thailand, we have two big of the players. The first one is, of course, Ascend Money, which is the first fintech unicorn in Thailand. They offer a good use case for spending at the convenience store at 7-Eleven because they are in the same conglomerate. The second one is Rapid Light Pay. Okay, they have a pretty good use case for using the BTS SkyTrain and all that. They have gathered all the merchants. Okay, and the situation is that banks know pretty well on the threat of these e-wallet providers. So that's why bank slashed down all the transaction fees. Okay, thanks to the prompt pay. And prompt pay in Thailand and the payment system in Singapore, we are integrated, right? And banks are doing the same thing, okay? Bank can collaborate with that super apps. So we have seen a good collaboration among Kasikorn and Line. Okay, they form a JV under the Line BK to offer payment, to offer lending. Okay, going back to super apps, I think from payment, from wallet, they would extend to something like insurance or investment in mutual funds or ETF, and yeah, on and on. So that's the trend. Okay. The last point I would like to mention here is that we in Thailand, okay, if you would like to know the opportunities, I think we are at a moment, whether we like it or not, we are the first group of developing countries entering into the age society, that we have more than 14% of our population aged over 65. Okay, but our income, I mean the median income or the median wealth is like half of the world's median. Okay, so keep it short, we are getting old, but we are still poor, and we are preparing not enough resources for retirement. Okay, and our household debt level is one of the highest group in the world. Okay, so that's the pain point. So if you guys, as a fintech startups or incumbent, if you can provide any of fintech services to cure those pain points, that would be a great opportunity. And please feel free to reach me via the Thai Fintech Association. Thank you. Go back to you, Ruben.
Thank you very much. Now you are scaring me because I also think that I need more money to retire. You know, so I think that's a good warning for all of us here. And look, you highlighted very well. I hope fintech can actually bring fintech and the solutions can help to support it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have saved the best for last. Allow us to introduce Mr. Nguyen Hoa Bin. Nguyen is the Vice President of Vietnam FinTech Club, Viet FinTech, and I'd like to introduce it. I'd like him to take the floor now. Nguyen, please.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Singapore's FinTech Association for inviting me to speak about the FinTech landscape in Vietnam. I'm being the Vice President of Viet FinTech Sub Association under Vietnam Banks Association. Happy to share you some of Vietnam FinTech landscape through statistics. So firstly, Vietnam FinTech at a glance, I belong to Vietnam Banks Association. We can include 73 members. Most of them are banks. And Viet FinTech Sub Association is a sub-member of the Vietnam Bank Association, include 16 FinTech members, including 13 payment players, 2 FinTech player, and 1 credit bureau. So in Vietnam, there has been a digital payment boom for the last 5 years, in which we experience 4x and 10x and 30x respectively growth in terms of internet banking transaction and mobile banking transaction. And from the statistics, as you see on the screen, we are experiencing, Vietnam is moving quite fast toward directly to more mobile transaction. Amid the pandemic, there is also a digital payment boom, in which in the first half of 2021, the mobile banking transaction grow by 33%, 83%, and the payment volume grow by more than double. In Vietnam, up to 2021, the first half, there were 33% of adults are bank user, meaning they have at least one bank account or bank cards. So I personally say some of the report on Vietnam FinTech landscape to identify Vietnam as an unbanked country with like 20-something% of population bank person, a bank user, right? That is actually very wrong fact, that can lead to improper investment decision. So in the market, currently there are about more than 100 active FinTech startup, excluding blockchain decentralized finance, which are quite hot recently, which I will discuss later. Most of them are payment company with 43 startups has been licensed by Central Bank of Vietnam to officially operate as a third-party payment provider, including payment gateway, e-wallet, and etc. There are the second largest segments are lending startups. For consumer and SME, there are about 40 players, but there is no legal framework for this region, for this area, which I will discuss in later slides. Some others segment, including InsurTech, RegTech, compression, marketplace, and scoring. Each sector has under 10 players, but they are still quite new for the recent 2 or 3 years. The digital payment surge amid the pandemic, in terms of first half of this year versus the same period last year, the payment gateway transaction grow by half, and payment volume also grow by 43%. The e-wallet transaction grow by 85%, and payment volume grow by 92%. Monthly collection and disbursement service, the transaction grow by 47%, and volume payment volume grow by almost 80%. But in Vietnam, regardless of the efforts from the fintechs, according to a statistic from Vietnam Banks Association, then bank card still dominate Vietnam according to first half statistic. Firstly, in terms of the number of cards in circulation, there are about 110 million bank card in circulation versus 92 million in terms of total population. Total card usage volume for the first half of this year has reached $112 billion in total volume, where in which the payment volume is almost half, and cash withdrawal volume is almost half. So from here we can see that the digital payment has already been quite catch up with cash economy. In terms of payment volume breakdown, then almost more than 60% of card payment volume is still on traditional POS, because we are dominated by banks. 22.8% of card usage volume are spent on e-commerce, like online payment on e-commerce website driven by on the payment gateways provided by banks and payment startups. M-POS is quite popular in Vietnam for the last 4 years. It has grown to more than 5% of total card payment volume, dominated by a startup called M-POS.vn, which account for 75% of market share, and the total number of terminals on the market account for 30% of all POS terminal provided by all the banks. On the other hand, QR code payment, despite there is a boom recently in terms of payment acceptance location, but actually the adoption from the user is still quite pretty low, only account for 0.3% of total payment volume shared by all e-wallet and mobile banking application, regardless of very strong subsidized effort by the startup backed by the venture capital firms. So lastly, I would like to discuss about some challenges and opportunities for fintech startups in Vietnam, focusing on two main largest sectors. The first one is e-wallet. Right, e-wallet startups are struggling to stay relevant with their main competitors. The first one is bank cards. Bank cards play as a funding source for all the e-wallet in Vietnam per regulation. So the e-wallet has to compete with actually their own mother as well. Number two is recently in Vietnam, all the banks are very dynamic and fast mover in terms of issuing mobile banking application, and especially they offer free and instant interbank transfer service, and also QR code payment and other on-app utilities as well. So actually nowadays in Vietnam, the mobile banking apps is actually look very similar and even stronger than many e-wallet startups. The challenge to e-wallet startups, number one is they have to tie up to bank card and bank account per regulation. So they face economic issue where they have to the MDR must be higher than the MDR of the card transaction. Number two is merchant acceptance. They have to subsidize the transaction in order to encourage the usage from the merchant and the consumer. Number three, though about two challenge lead to the third challenge, which is operating loss. So require much funding from the external investor. So the opportunities for e-wallet startups in Vietnam, which I see, is to become merchant gateway for payment issuers. Which I see, some local startup in Vietnam doing very well, and e-wallet for vertical niche to avoid competition with the strong above competitors. The second one is the second sector is lending and buy now pay later startups are also struggling to prove itself, with the main competitors credit cards. Actually, the local banks in Vietnam now, they are also very fast and fast moving in terms of issuing credit card, even to factory worker, like what they call the blue collar workers, and also the financial companies. The traditional financial company is also issuing very easy and fast going credit card as well. So the challenges of lending and buy now pay later startups are actually their own approval process because the banks now, the bank and financial company now, they are also offering a lot of easy process, including eKYC as well, right? And number two challenge is the lack of legal framework to enable fintech lending startup to that will indirectly lead to higher ratio of bad debt, and also the economic model of higher interest. So the opportunity here for fintech for lending and buy now pay later startups are also actually a merchant gateway to connect buy now pay later issuer, including bank credit cards to merchants. Actually, in Vietnam, bank credit card can be used for buy now pay later purpose with interest-free installment payment as well, with most of 30 bank issuer. Other opportunities for fintech startup, including also we see recently blockchain decentralized finance. We can heard recently a lot of actually Vietnam is a very dynamic and hot market for what we call cryptocurrency trading communities. And we heard recently there are few startup comes out from this space, including like RC Infinity or Coin 98 in fintech sector, or VNDT stablecoin as well.
Sorry, I will need you to conclude. Sorry, Ruben here. I'll need you to conclude in view of time.
Okay,
Thank you.
And database, lending service. So about with some of my quick recap on Vietnam fintech landscape. Hand over to you, Ruben.
Right. Thank you so much, Nguyen. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying throughout with us. I really appreciate it. Now, but in view of time, I have to apologize. I will not be able to take any questions. So if you do have any pressing need, feel free to just drop us an email. We'll be happy to share the questions with the respective speakers, and then we'll invite them to respond to that question as well. Now, what I'll do now is to all my speakers, I would give you some time to just have a quick think, because what I'll do is not I will have a very quick summary, but at the same time, before we end, I would like to invite you to give you 30 seconds to just share with me in 2022, what would you like to see change, or what would you like to see in your country for fintech? Okay, so have a think through on it, and we'll go through that later. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this session, we have here from 8 esteemed speakers from 8 different countries, and I think it's beautiful that you actually get a very quick snapshot. You get a very quick 101 of each country, and I can't think of a better place to do that than here. Now, I would like to give you 4 key points that I thought was very well brought up by the speakers, and it kind of synced across all the 8 countries, 8 different markets. Number 1, there is experiencing tremendous growth in all 8 markets. Regarding, are you talking about Singapore, Hong Kong, Myanmar, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, you name it, all 8 countries are experiencing great growth in fintech space. So to all my fintech startups out there, to all my founders out there, hang in there, hang on, you will succeed, all right? Because the market is just growing, as you can see from all the speakers today. Number 2, two verticals have been coming out very strongly across all the speakers: RegTech and payment. And this is very interesting because payments is very big, a lot about B2C. We are all talking about making money, making transactions happen. And I would like to call that out, because without your solutions in payments, without your solution e-wallet, there will be no transaction. That is a very, very key point, because there is no flow of funds, there's no execution, there is no business being done if not for payments. But importantly, I also want to call out RegTech, which is very interesting, because this then represents a B2B kind of business, where you see that no matter what growth you are experiencing, RegTech underpinning that. So there's a different form of KYC being illustrated here. So I do want to call these two particular verticals. Thirdly, all these improvements that we are seeing, all this growth that you are seeing are underpinned by technology. We hear about high mobile phone penetration. We hear a lot about blockchain, Web 3.0 over the past 1 week, and in fact for the past month in all various different fintech festivals that in different countries are experiencing. We heard about AI as well. So for those developers who are in this space, you are in a very good space. Continue to lend your expertise to us, to the fintech space, to help us to move on from here. Last but not least, this is a very important point that I want to call out, and this really echo all my 8 speakers that have been saying so far. Micro SMEs, needs and demands. At the end of the day, everything that we are seeing here is because there's a very strong demand in all 8 markets, cry out by our micro, NS, small and medium enterprises. Fintechs are meeting the needs. And that's regardless of country, regardless of language that we speak. So I will continue to encourage all our listeners here today. If you are meeting a need out there, especially for MSME, you are in the right place. So I do encourage you to just powering on there and continue to share your solutions with us. Now, right now, let me just go back to all my 8 speakers, or in this case, 7, because we had to drop off. Let's go through the same order again. Can I invite Thomas? Thomas, just give us 30 seconds. What would you like to see in 2022 in Cambodia?
Sure. Well, I think that seeing what also other speakers were saying, and it was brought up multiple times, RegTech, it's something that we probably still lack most, even in comparison to other Asian countries. We just recently conceptualized the idea of regulatory sandbox for fintech and other industries. So, for example, what Amor was saying, I absolutely see that this one would be very needed in Cambodia. But what we lack is expertise in RegTech, investments into RegTech, and overall interest for it. So, encourage anybody from international side. We need a lot of help on this, and we are open to collaboration. So, RegTech 2022 definitely a big focus.
Thanks, Thomas. Now, next to Helene, Hong Kong.
Hey, thank you, Ruben. For us here, I think less is more. So I will start with 3 less: borderless, frictionless, and seamless. So hopefully, whether you're in RegTech, payments, or whatever, you can work towards less is more. So let me just pause there.
Beautiful, thanks, Helene. Pak Ferdi for Indonesia.
Okay, thank you. I think we believe that the upcoming year or upcoming future that we will have more experience on the integration, more than unicorn in terms of fintech, because we have some unicorn already in fintech, and of course more on regional player come to Indonesia, or we do outbound investment. Because like mentioned earlier, the SME also now become bigger and really needs the fintech support. Thank you.
Thanks for Ferdi, and to Karen, Malaysia.
Thank you, Ruben. I would say that it is a harmonization of regulators so that startups can, at the get-go, plan for 600 million in population rather than a small one. Thanks.
Thank you. And more for Philippines?
Yes. Well, it's a century of fintech and also that of ASEAN. I said this before, I said it again. Western regions have 25 banking licenses in total, US and Europe specifically. We have 40. Asia's the largest fintech, and ASEAN really is at the heart and center of it. And look forward to collaborating and having that meal with all of you very soon.
Thanks, Amor. And for Singapore, I just want to say that, look, I hope all my neighbors do very well. All our 8 countries here, all our 7 neighbors here do well. Singapore is a very small country. It's a very, very small population. So we can only be as successful as all our neighbors. So for 2022, I wish all my neighbors do excellently well, so that we can also benefit and enjoy the rewards. Now, can I overhand it to Chalandat from Thailand?
Hi, thanks again. I think for next year, we will have 4 letters. CBDC. Okay, it's going to be the next big thing over medium term, because China is there, very, very prominent on both retail and wholesale CBDC. Our central banks are collectively working together on wholesale CBDC, and it's been such a nice success among China ASEAN and Middle East. Okay, and it's gonna be a good thing if we have retail CBDC that could be programmable. We can have smart contract on our retail CBDC, and it would disrupt a lot of things, including capital market, DLT, and all that. So keep our eyes on that for CBDC. Okay.
Thanks, good point, Chandat. And last but not least, to Nguyen from Vietnam.
Yeah, very shortly, actually, we see that the centralized finance ecosystem has been around for 100 years, facing very fierce competition from the decentralized finance. So I believe that that situation forces us to closely work together as a connected ASEAN to stay relevant. Hand over to you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I want to thank all my audience here. You guys soldier on with us, even though we exceeded the timing. So once again, thank you. And I hope all of you have enjoyed the session. I trust that you have gained a lot from all our speakers here. You managed to tour 8 countries despite pandemic in 100 minutes. So once again, big thank you. I know there's a lot of questions about the slides. I'll get approval from all our speakers. And once everything is okay, we'll share the slides with everybody as well. Any last words from anyone? If not, then thank you so much. Take care. See you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.